Welcome to the Voiceless Thoughts podcast, where we give voice to your thoughts, feelings, and situations in life. This show is all about making you feel like you aren't facing life alone. As a note, myself and other anchors are normal men who are not certified, trained, or in any way credited as being mental health professionals. Enjoy the show. In addition, if you have any questions or thoughts that you would like to hear us discuss, feel free to email us at voicelessthoughtspodcast@gmail.com. Disclaimer, it's spelled how the title of the show is spelled. Transitioning. Smigs. Should I say Brandon? Gosh, I gotta... Transitioning. Brandon. I know that you had released a couple episodes under the same title of this podcast previously. Would you like to kind of talk a little bit about that to the listeners?
Yeah, so I kind of wanted to... It's kind of the corny way of voiceless thoughts. What it really means is I feel like there is a lot of people that are afraid to come out or say something about depression, about any type of issues that they go through in a day. And they feel like because some people might be bullied for it, some might just be afraid to truly come out and try to get help. And this is our experiences with getting help with different things, bullying, depression, anything that we have went through, and we will try to. We're not gonna appease every situation because this is what we went through, but hopefully you understand that not everybody is alone in this, and we're trying to be your voice, funny enough.
Well, man, I just feel like you hit the nail on the head there.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny. I think this episode's going to be a bit more freeform. And I think even just like, what is it, 2 minutes and 40 seconds before we started recording this, like we were joking about how this is going to go. But, to put some insight into this, we've spent hours now trying to kind of nail down what it is you actually are, envisioning for the show and what we can talk about together. And it does seem like it's hard to separate all the things that are hard to talk about: depression, bullying, anxiety, mental health issues in general.
Yeah, because they all deserve their own podcast. So this being everything, it's going to be a fun but challenging way to juggle different situations, different problems that people go through. But hopefully each podcast will have its own over topic, and we will go and tell stories about us. We will also find sources that we should, like the professionals, show us, and then we just talk about that and what we have dealt with according to the professional opinion.
Yeah, and kind of piggyback off that too, again, just to reiterate, we're going to have pretty much a standardized intro for the show. So if you guys are listening, there will be a timestamp. We can make that work, I'm assuming, in our descriptions. But we're going to basically open up, just say, we're normal guys. We're both young. We both have our biases. We're both, privileged enough to live in a certain part of society. We're not going to cover every issue from every viewpoint, and we're not going to be able to give a good answer, and we're probably not going to even give great answers. And we're not trying to give answers. We're here to talk and share experiences and, hopefully fill some drives home from work, if nothing else, with hope and laughter, entertainment.
Yeah. Sometimes it's not going to be a comedy, so we'll have to balance that. But
most of the time it will be.
Yeah, with how we talk. But we do want to have you not feel alone. So we talk about these things. So maybe your situation is similar. Not every situation is the same. So maybe it's similar. And that'll help you understand that you're not alone. And that was a big thing in my first 2 podcasts is that I did personally, was not being alone. And that's why I called it Voiceless Thoughts, because I've had moments where I felt like I was alone, but going and talking to certain different people helped me personally. I don't know if what you think of that, but
Well, so I think before we even get into that too, that's a really great point. And I think that's a really great jumping off point for after we introduce ourselves. But since this is our first podcast, we have foregone the traditional ritual of introducing ourselves. So my name's Jake. I am the co-host of the Voice of Thoughts podcast. By the very gracious invitation of Brandon, the other co-host and founder of the very idea of Voiceless Thoughts. He is the other voice in the show. And so we are sitting down here to talk to you guys once again about the things that are hard to talk to. Hopefully there to be a voice for those who feel like they don't have one.
And I know that this is going to come up and you're going to be confused. He's going to call me Smigs once in a while. So if that comes up, that's just my nickname. So that way you connect the 2 names. Okay. So it's Brandon or Smigs. Just
for the
in case
record,
you get confused.
Right. For the record, this is already a hodgepodge. And again, bear with us. This is our first podcast. But yeah, I truly am going to work on that. I thought I had kind of gotten it down, but clearly not. So talking to people, that's where you want to kick it off. I think that's a great place to kick it off.
So we will have a helpline and different things in our description and also at the end of the video. But I do want to talk about just talking to your friends, your family, anybody that is around that you could talk to about your issues. You don't have to bring out the entire thing, because that might be hard. That was hard for me in the beginning, is to talk about my problems, my issues to the full extent. But it does help relieve you somewhat when you do talk about it and you have someone else there to understand and listen to you. Like, I think we've all went through different things. Life is through, we have all kinds of experiences that we might not understand, that we might don't know how to talk about, don't know how to combat it. So just talking about it in general could help you figure out different ways to help yourself.
Well, it's Biggs. You opened up with a really good point there too, before you got into that other really good point. So again, with the show, standard procedure, we are going to have our disclaimer of, if you guys are, on the verge of a really, really extreme decision in your life, for the negative, right? Whatever that may be. We have the helpline in here included.
The helpline is a very important thing to try. They are anonymous, so if you're worried about that, you don't have to worry about people knowing that you did it, or knowing, because I understand that some people might get bullied for trying to seek out help. And we'll have a episode on bullying, and we'll have more in-depth talk about getting help and where to go, what to do, things like that. But first, I want to talk about us as individuals, our current mental health situation status, so you can kind of understand who we are and what we're coming from. And we will definitely go in more depth on what we personally go through in different situations in the future. But you want to start us out on how are you right now, Jake?
Thank you, Brandon. Gosh, man. As a fellow college student, this is the end of the term for me, and it's the end of college.
Same here.
Yep, college career is over for us. You know, so that's a myriad of feelings. I personally had like a pretty sketchy living situation the last few months. So that was pretty stressful for me. I've always had like a bit of anxiety the last 2-ish years. That's been pretty noticeable. Depression's only been like the last year or so, where it's just kind of been a mix of not getting a whole lot of worth out of life in general. But this past week has been really good. You know, getting out of the living situation was the biggest deal. Cutting back the drinking a little bit. Trying to get into a regular workout routine. So it's been good. My fiance and I have been spending a lot of quality time together. We have a show right now that we're both like super invested in.
That kind of gets you out of it.
Right. And just having that routine. Yes. You know, having that to look forward to at the end of the day. And for me, I'm a very obsessive person. So like it's one track mind, one thing to the other. It's either, you know, the thing I'm doing for myself for pleasure or the thing that I do with me and my significant other, you know, for fun. So it's either like the video game I'm focused on, you know, it's working out. You know, Riley and I have been, my fiance Riley, sorry, have been lifting together, and that's been awesome. And, you know, we'll make dinner together, we'll grill out. So we've just been really investing in each other. And she's seriously, she's been my rock through so many different things. And it's so cheesy to say. I literally hate myself saying that right now. But for real, like there's, I'm not trying to say this in any way to like black and white people who aren't in relationships, because relationships take so much energy. But it's whether you're single or in a relationship, there's high points and low points. And, you know, we're just, you know, we're in that high point, and it's just been super amazing to experience that and just look back at kind of what we've been going through recently and just stopping and appreciating. So I'm in a good point right now, you know, on the up and up, at the end of the up and up, getting to that plateau of like, this is living, I'm good to go. Let's grind, you know?
Yeah. And then I have the same thing where it's like, what next? We both graduating, and it's like that is a big point in your life to where, what is next? What do we do next? Where am I going to go? Where am I going to live? What's going to happen? So, I'm more relieved right now because of ending with it, but there's also there's multiple different emotions going on when you're graduating. And so like relief that you finished, and also worried on what's next. Now, what are you going to do? Where are you going to get the money? Stuff like that. And I've been in depression. I've been dealing with depression off and on for a long time. It's been, I'm trying to think, good 10, 11 years. And then I've also dealt with social anxiety, which is a little different than anxiety. And we'll explain that in a future episode, but
it's coming, boys and girls.
But yeah. But what it really, like, the overarching is, social anxiety is the before and after, and anxiety's during, if that makes sense. So like it's constantly telling you not to do something. And that's just a broad sense on what it is, because there's a lot more to it, but trying to explain it without making it a whole episode is kind of difficult, because it could be a whole 45 minute episode in itself. But yeah, so I've been working a lot, so I've been busy constantly. So I haven't really had time to decompress and just think. So I'm thinking this next week is going to be a interesting week, because now I have less to do. I'm not working, school, internship, things on the side. things that I like to do. Like there's less of that now. So we'll see how that goes. Because personally, me being active and doing a lot of different things helps me. Might not help everybody, but that helps me. But you do need to have time to yourself, and I feel like because I slept a lot today too. That was nice. I first time in a long time. I just laid down and slept for a good amount, and I feel a lot better after that because sleep is very important.
Those kind of days are the best, without a
Oh
doubt.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you
Just
wake up and it's like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and you're
you're
like,
like,
yeah,
oh well,
didn't have to go to work today. Yeah,
I didn't have to set an alarm. That was weird for me. I
that's
always have to.
trippy.
I know. I always have an alarm because I always have something to do. And then today I was like, I don't think I really have anything to do. Not until
Oh yeah.
7 p.m. And then I was just like, yeah, I'm not even gonna set an alarm. I'm gonna wake up when I wake up. So
Um, but going back, so it does kind of sound like that empty space, not empty, but less fulfilled time for you is kind of like one of those areas where it's easy to lose yourself back into that similar mode of existing where you're victim to anxiousness or depression.
mm-hmm.
Um, and maybe just real quick, so our plan for you guys, listeners, we have a roadmap for episodes. We have like an overarching topic that involves a couple different episodes revolving around that topic. So this episode, we're trying to kind of introduce ourselves. We're also trying to get used to podcasting. I've never done it before.
Yeah.
Brandon has only done it for 2 episodes. So we're trying to kind of get in the mode here, and me is kind of trying to take more of the moderator role. That's why I'm explaining it to you now. So I'm trying not to steal stage time from you, Brandon, because I know you have a lot to say. But so we have a roadmap. We're not trying to get too deep into things or our past history because we just want to save all that content for when we're like diving into stuff, because we just want to give you guys impactful episodes.
Yeah. We're kind of explaining where we're taking this. So we're giving you little snippets of everything for you to understand what's going to be coming in the future.
Right. In addition to hopefully making you smile at one point or another, because it has been kind of serious so far. But so Brandon, if you could real quick, just kind of capture what it is when you say it's interesting to see what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what is, like, if there's a thing on the horizon you're most unsure about what you're going to see from this free time, like, what do you think it's going to be and why?
So the unknown is scary for everybody, but something with time when I don't have, when I'm not doing something for most of the day, or I am basically just either on my computer doing something, or anything that doesn't involve like my work, school, internship, usually just my brain goes a million miles an hour. So it kind of, you start thinking of things, and either good or bad. And it's kind of hard to handle that when you have nothing to distract you from. So it's kind of a distraction, me doing so much. Because I have noticed it before, that's when my point of depression is at its high, is when there's less for me to do, because I am just in my thoughts. And I think that happens like every once in a while, but lately it hasn't, because of how distracted I have been with how much work I've been doing. But I don't know. It's hard to get out of that mindset too sometimes. So when you're sitting there and you're thinking of, oh, what's now what? Like I have no like future plan on what I'm gonna do next. So it's kind of weird. I don't know if you've ever felt that, where like you don't know what's gonna happen in a month. You don't know what job you're gonna be going for. You're just in the thinking stage of what's gonna happen.
Well, it's funny you say that, both from the angle of, being a victim of your overactive brain, and to the point of like professionally, like you're not sure what the next step is. For the latter, I think that a lot of college students, especially today, there's a big push for college students, or for high schoolers graduating, to go to college, essentially because that was your best way to get like a quote unquote high paying job, and today, obviously, just Google it for a couple seconds and you'll see like college isn't necessarily the answer for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But it's funny. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I was just saying there's like trade schools. There's all kinds of different avenues that you can go. But
no, exactly. That was my point. It's regardless, you have a mass amount of young Americans, and obviously like this is a limited perspective here, but we have a vast amount of American young adults who are asking that same question, what's next? As much as colleges will say they prepare you for what's next, that's a big step, and I was fortunate enough, the major I picked and the pipelines I get into, like I have a secure job offer, but that is not true for a lot of people coming out of college, regardless of where you come from and, what you choose to study. So that's a very common issue. And I just feel like more often than not, I'm talking to people who not only like regret going to college, but they have friends who are in trade that are making more money than them, have less debt than them. And we're not, I'm not trying to push this, and I don't think Brandon is either. We're not trying to push that, college isn't the answer for people. It just depends on what you want to do.
And another thing that a future episode we're going to go into, money's not the answer either. And I went through that when I was so I've been in 3 different colleges and 3 different majors. So 3 different majors. So like I have went and thought, is this what I want to do? Even if it makes me the most money, but is it what I want to do? Is it what I want to do for the rest of your life? And personally, that's why I changed, just because I didn't think that is something I wanted to do for my life. So that is an important thing. You don't need to look at money when you're looking at colleges or trades. You want to look at what you're going to be going for most of your life. You're going to be working. So you're going to want to do something that you love to do and are not every morning just kicking yourself, trying to get yourself to go to work.
Yeah. And that's a really good caveat to, where we were transitioning. Because going forward, so that, it's funny you say kicking yourself to get to work. You and I both are, obviously we're young people. We were privileged enough to kind of grow up in a certain part of the United States where we had a lot of decent job opportunities, regardless of what we were going to do. Right. I think that's fair to say. And I think from our limited perspective in that sense, we had the opportunity to choose that. And that kind of feeds into your other point of that overactive mindset of yours, right? So we're transitioning here from, not knowing what to do professionally. And obviously there's a lot more that goes into that. And honestly, that'd be a really good series of episodes to record. Take notes, Migs. But that the empty space, I think that's an enemy that a lot of people, if they have tuned in to listen to this podcast via the title only, I think that the empty space is an enemy a lot of people can get behind. I think there's a lot of studies that have shown that a lot of, again, North Americans specifically, but people in general, they suffering from ADD and ADHD, having overactive minds and not really being able to occupy them. ADHD and ADD depression, that is a thing. And just in general, just like thinkers, like there's a lot of stigma around thinkers and, being oversensitive, being self-conscious, being hyper aggressive. I'm sure there's other terms. But you brought up an interesting point of just that empty space is kind of a connecting thread. And that's a hard thing to deal with because it's empty. You have to find something to fill it, and that's a hard task.
Yeah.
And so that's daunting because you've gone from your lifestyle of being a student for not even just college, but your entire life. Like this is the thing that a lot of young people who are at least semi dialed into their studies, if it's a student who really hasn't cared about school and is able to pass their classes without really paying any mind to it, their entire school career. Wow. Can't even speak. If this is a student who can't even be bothered to study and still passes all of their classes with straight A's, they're not really going to bat an eye at not being in school anymore. But for those of us who have to put some work into school, it's weird to have that responsibility be gone.
Coming home and studying or doing different projects and all the other things that come into school that some people are very smart and are able to just quickly pick it up and boom, they're done. But not everybody is like that. And me personally, it was just, I had to work extra hard in my schooling because of all of my my brain just moving at 100 miles an hour, just trying to focus on one thing, because focus is a huge part in studies.
Yeah. So again, this is the episode where we create 10 new episodes. But attention and attention deficit disorders, that's a whole nother thing we could get into too.
Yeah.
Because I think you and I kind of are on common ground there. But kind of refocusing, that's the thing, right? Is, whether you're a big thinker or you're not, and you just worked your ass off in school, or you just skated by in school, like even just if you're skating by in school, still that expectation of you being there is gone.
Yeah.
And you're left in the big world, and you either have something you have to do afterwards or you don't. And that's huge. And that's life-changing, to say the least.
It's a big milestone in your life when you graduate, and now you have to, like you said, go in the big world.
Right.
Put your big pants on and get a job and do all the things that you didn't really have to worry about. You didn't have to, not everybody, some people might have to worry about it, but me personally, I didn't have to worry about like food or money, but that is a whole nother topic, because there is some people that do worry about that. But now that I become an adult, now I'm like, who knew that bananas go bad so quick? Like, it's just the little things like that people,
avocados,
that you don't know when you're a kid. And so now you're an adult and you're like, wow, this is so different.
Well, it's so funny that you're making I totally agree with you 100%. You're talking about being an adult now. You know, a lot of people kind of look at graduating high school as being an adult, and it's, you know, one way or the other, regardless of how you think about it. It's just funny, like, to be fair to you, you did have to worry about like food. Like, you buy your own food. You go we work at the same place. Like, we both have a job. You know, we're still like full-time students, full-time working. You know, it's not like we're living off our parents, but like to some degree, it's not like we're not estranged from our parents. We're not orphans. We're not, you know.
Yeah.
There's clearly different perspectives to be had there alone, regardless of socioeconomic and geographic background. But you're right. Like, just those, having to balance that mixed with, okay, my job has an insurance plan and insurance options. So let's sort through those, because I clearly understand that. Like, no, you know, there's all kinds of things that show you adults are kids pretending to be smart kids. Like, it's, and you know, that'll be a cool thing too with this show, is hopefully we can kind of catalog our transition from being 23 to being 40. You know, is how are we gonna navigate this?
We're gonna be the same nursing home, just like back in my day.
Have all these podcasts for you.
Yeah. Because we're almost at that age too, that is an when we're off our parents' insurance, and now we have to me personally, I'd be off my parents' insurance in the next couple of years, and then I have school that I have to pay for. I have insurance that I have to figure out. There's a lot of different things that you don't not everybody has to worry about when they're young, and then when they get older, it just all hits them at once, and it's kind of hard to feel like hard to understand when you haven't really dealt with it in a full extent until now.
Oh yeah, I totally agree. And I think, so we had a plan for the show, and I think we're mostly hitting the points we wanted to talk about. I think I think we should push one of the points that you touched on earlier to another show, about the power of talking to people, because I think that genuinely is so huge. I mean, just with you and I mean, I just feel like if no one listens to this show, like, the fact that you and I are talking together is just amazing. Like, this is great for both of us.
It's going to help us. Yeah.
Right. So whatever. But I think kind of going into adolescence, right? I think we have a really good perspective now, because we still feel like children.
Yeah, in the head, we might be a little childish at times.
But we have people asking us about, you know, insurance, and we have credit cards and credit lines, and you know, it's
loans and all this other stuff.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's a good transition. I don't know if you wanted to give a little bit of a synopsis of your upbringing, your family background, where you grew up at, like, why that impacted you today in kind of like important ways. But that might be a good time now, if you would like.
Yeah. So I grew up privileged, and I know that I grew up with a family with money, not like this crazy amount of money, but we were stable. I had a decent sized house. I had food on my table. I didn't have to worry about a lot of that things, but I also, I feel I've grown to be really self-aware, only because of my parents, that I talk to them all the time. That's someone that I talk to. That's someone that you can, or someone else, but that my family is my rock, let's say. And with what they do as a living, I've heard stories of some things that people do that are just awful things. And I've heard different stories, and what she taught me is to look in the other person's shoes and try to figure out different things. So that's how I have went through life, is I try to understand other people and what they're going through. Because someone could be mad at you, like act like they're mad at you. You think they're mad at you, but they're just upset at something else. That's a simple like story, but it helps to understand what they're going through at the time. And so like that's how I grew up, because there's a lot of things in my life that I regret, but going forward, I just need to fix everything that I might say. Like, I'm not perfect. I've said things that I don't feel comfortable, that I feel awful that I said, and I need to fix those things. So not everybody, no one's perfect. So you just need to be able to understand where you're coming from and where they're coming from to fully help people and to fully be a good person, quote unquote.
Man, you've given me so much to dissect there, man. Well, let's start with first and foremost. So you said, wow. So you said your parents were in a line of work where you got to see a lot of dramatic views of humanity.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
You said that there's things that you regret that you would want to fix.
Mm-hmm.
When you say fix, like, what does that mean to you? I know we're getting a little deep here, but I think it's a good point to make, just as far as kind of examining, I guess, true regret. If we want to get into that today.
Yeah. Because that also is going to be another full episode. But there's a lot of our stuff that we talk about, we could talk for like a long time for, so it's kind of hard to put it into just one episode. But so I've been on both sides. I've been bullied, and sometimes you don't realize what you say, how it affects other people. Okay. And like me and you, we could joke around all the time and we understand each other. But when you try to bring that energy onto someone that you don't know, it might come across as the wrong way. So you don't want to, because what me and you can say to each other, we can't really come across to someone else and say the exact same thing without knowing who they are. So like you have to understand other people before you can start talking to them and joking around. Because joking around is part of friendship, but first we have to understand each other before we can start joking around, because you don't want to hurt someone's feelings to the point where they get either like the extremes of getting depressed, or even as little as they're just not going to talk to you anymore, or they're going to snap at you one of these times, because what you say can be hurtful. And so I've been on both sides, and I soonly realized, because I'm a people watcher. So I try to understand people just by what I see. And if I say something jokingly, I might be joking, but sometimes you can tell if they didn't take it that way. They took it a different way. And I feel instantly bad about it. But usually it's after the fact where we're not like close by. So it's like, man, I wish I wouldn't have said that. I wish I wouldn't have did that.
If I may stop you right there. Mm-hmm. So you brought up two really good points. The first one, so you have to understand someone, is what you said. And mm-hmm. I think that's a really good point to make. And I think you could go even further to say that it's especially today, it's really hard to understand people. You know,
Yeah.
people I feel like are one of the most complicated. I mean, let's, take modern science. We understand like what, 20% of the human brain right now.
Yeah.
Like people are super complex, and
Hmm.
I don't even know if we can go as far as saying you have to understand someone. I almost wonder if it's show them that you want to try,
Yeah.
just like create that empathy of trying, like you said earlier, like see it in their shoes, like try to understand where they're coming from, like
Hmm.
even just showing that to someone. And I don't know if that's where you were going, but that's what kind of
Yeah.
came to my head.
And we're just in the
No,
tone
and
of
the
the
other
voice
thing,
can tell, and the way we act towards each other. But you have to understand your voice as well. So how are you projecting to them? Because a joke that you might think in your head is a joke, but if you listen to it and understand what you're saying out loud, that could sound completely different to what you have in your head. So that's another point of understanding.
yeah, right? Self-awareness. Oh gosh, man, we're touching on the really good points tonight. um,
I told
and
you
for
we're
the
gonna get
record,
every section.
right? For the record, sorry guys, we're not trying to. I think that tonight's been a bit more serious than we want it to be. But we really just kind of wanted to feel this out for ourselves, get some good content out there, and get a good conversation going, and just kind of show you guys who we are. We're not trying to pretend to be anybody specific, and Smigs and I both agreed we're not trying to lay out specific notes for the show.
Yeah.
We're trying to kind of freeform this a little bit, so hopefully you guys like this. But regardless, you mentioned earlier too, like you spend a lot of time like analyzing people, like as far as like with your visual components of your face, Brandon face. And that's something to be said too. There's a lot that you can learn from people. People watching is, first of all, a favorite hobby of mine is people watching.
Yeah.
That
Especially
is
when you're in college and you just sit in the cafeteria and you're just like looking around. You're like,
underrated pastime
right there? Yep.
Yes, before Netflix turned into a web service and it was just on a DVD, you would spend half your time of the day watching Netflix on a DVD and the other half people watching at the cafeteria, for the record. And, but it's a good point. There's a lot of mannerisms that people can communicate with you via their body. And, it's funny with COVID-19 too, there's something to be said for masks kind of eliminating some of those things with your face. I'm not trying to make a case in any way for or against masks. We're not going there. But, people have noticed it is harder to read people's face, harder to read lips. Physical manifestations make a big difference. And aside from just basic judgments of that person is holding a gun and he's going to shoot me, like, there's physical stature, physical carrying of your weight on your body, like that sends a message. And so it's interesting that you brought that up, because that's another form of communication, which is another like component of your overall state of being. And that goes for yourself, like your words and your carry weight of your body and how you use your limbs and how you like stand up straight. Like that's, that all kind of contributes to like what message you're sending to people. And that's a huge thing that's been pushed in the business college at, the college that we go to. That's a whole nother slew of things to talk about, but that's a really good point that you brought up.
Well, it's like, let's take a simple situation. Sarcasm. Okay. So sarcasm usually, not all of the time, can be good or bad. Usually it's not hurtful in any way, but like understanding people through text versus in person with their sarcasm that just explains how you're supposed to understand people. Because like you can't really, like when you're watching someone, there's so much more that you can get from the conversation than through text, because you might not be able to understand the sarcasm through text, but you can totally understand, not all the time, but totally understand the sarcasm to in person, like when you're talking to them.
Side note, I think that the initial implementation of texting in relationships tore many relationships asunder with how little context there was.
Oh yeah, that's another one too. Man,
relationships. Ooh, 6-part series.
Oh, that's gonna be so much. We got huge episodes on that one. So yeah, so I think we've gotten a good idea of what we are going for, and different like a lot of the stuff we just touched on a little bit, but we will go on further. So I really hope you like this and you understand. So in the beginning, we gave you that email. I would recommend or encourage you to send us questions that you want us to talk about. And we're probably going to be recording in advance, so we won't get it until a couple episodes in, but we do want to interact with you and talk about your questions, or I don't know, you don't have to, but if you're comfortable, and we won't put any names, nothing, but like your story, because we're only two people. We haven't experienced everything. So having other people's stories and understanding all sorts of different areas in life will help us and help you as well, I hope. So got any other closing remarks?
Yeah. So, I mean, and that's a good way to transition it. So I think, drawing it to a close. Again, so like ultimately we're here to follow Brandon's vision. Like we want to be a voice for people that feel like they're alone. For those of you that feel like you're experiencing something nobody else has, or maybe perhaps your situation is just too much, or just life sucks. Life, and I think there should be a disclaimer in the show too. Life is very difficult. I think that a lot of people like to write off existing as a human being as being easy. I mean, there is so much to living that if you actually buy into any part of it, it becomes overwhelming almost instantly. So there is no part of being human that is easy, and I think that that's kind of a core base principle that's permeating our ideas here too, is nobody has the answers. Nobody has this figured out. Like we're young guys. We're not trying to push anything on anyone, but we also just want to talk about it. And so if that's something that you're vibing with, if you want to send us an email, we're more than happy to throw it in somewhere in the show. Just talk about a different perspective than ours. We'd love to hear from you guys. We'd love to, just see it from a different lens.
And I do want to say that I don't want anybody to feel that your situation is not as bad as others. And I know that is a huge topic to talk about, because some people feel they can't speak out because their situation is not as bad. Everybody has a right to be happy, to be able to speak out. So I don't feel like anybody's situation is worse than others. I feel everybody is validated to have a opinion on how tough life is in general. So I don't want anybody to be afraid of that.
Oh, I think, to be fair, I think life is subjective too. I mean, I think everyone in their own situation has their own hardships. Like just because, like, okay, the standard North American ideal is like, at least you're not starving in Africa like those other children on the commercial, right? Like that's the big propaganda swing or whatever. Like, well, yeah, but it's subjective. Like that's their struggle in their life. Like it's not to say that you can't have struggles that affect you maybe similarly in yours, you know, and we're not here to draw lines. We're here to hear your stories. Like we genuinely are interested in what you are struggling with. Like I feel like I'm speaking for Brandon and I, we're making this show to help people through what they're struggling with, really. I mean, Brandon, I don't know if you want
to help us
add anything to that.
I think, sure. I think we're here to help us because I want to know all kinds of different situations. I want to help everybody, but I also want to help myself, and me hearing other people's stories, I think will help me personally, knowing that I'm not the only one that goes through that. So hopefully that's what you feel. Hopefully that's what you get out of it. Because maybe it doesn't, maybe it does. It does for me personally, but not for everybody. But hopefully that we get this podcast, this is what we come across as.
Well, again, just to reiterate, you know, before we start talking, you said yourself, Brandon, you're a storyteller. A lot of people just express themselves differently. They learn differently. And I think that's going to kind of come through in their perception of input that they choose to subscribe to. And so I hope that you guys kind of maybe resonate with one of us. You know, Brandon's a big storyteller. And I think that hopefully my analytical approach maybe, you know, aligns with some other people, but hopefully we kind of have some sort of balance where we can capture some people into reflecting, listening, coming clean, being honest, confronting some challenges. But ultimately, we're here for you guys. And again, we have that email at the beginning of the show. And that 800 number, by the way, it's 800-273-8255. If you guys are feeling like you're making extreme decisions, you're on the verge of doing something that you're taking pretty seriously, we just ask maybe you'd call that number. Again, it's anonymous. There's no harm.
In the description, we'll also have other different sites, because this is just one, and there's all kinds of different ways to get in touch with someone to talk to. So we'll put a couple different numbers and maybe even emails or anything that you feel comfortable to talk to someone.
And I think with that, man, let's see how many closing remarks. Well, hey, thank you guys for joining us with this show. We're both really excited. Hopefully it wasn't too jumbled for you. Again, give us any feedback through our email. We hope to hear from you guys soon. Wow, I can't even talk. It's late.
Late.